good. Hold on, I'm trying to. It's so annoying. The one thing I don't like about share screen is when you do that, all the other panels and the chats go go to a weird side. Hold on. Yeah, it's probably about that time. There's the chat. Okay, cool, cool. All right, now I can see all this. So I can't see the rest of you because share screen is weird, but it should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and click the broadcast button. So we should be all set. Aaron, you good to record? You can just type it in the chat. I can see the chat now. Oh, nice. Yep. Good point. There we go. God, that looks weird. Got it. Cool. All right, Aaron's ready. Cool. Click broadcast. And hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We're just getting ready to get started in just a little bit, but we actually have a poll we'd like you guys to answer. Just curious about where you all are on in the grad school process. If you could take some time and answer that question, we'd really appreciate it. We'll help inform the questions and things we ask. All right. Thanks a bunch, guys. All right, guys, for those just coming in, be sure to fill out the poll right now, asking everybody where they are in the grad school process, as well as go ahead and notice we have a Q&A box. We'll be asking some of the questions later to the panelists. So if you want to go ahead and answer that poll, as well as go ahead and put in some Q&A questions, we'll probably get started here in probably the next minute or so. Awesome, awesome. All right, guys, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. First off, thanks everybody for coming out. Thanks everyone for coming out. I'm going to wanted to share these results with you just to see where everybody is in the process right now. You know, it looks like we have a good amount of people who are undecided. People will start applying in years too. So a little bit of a range, but hopefully after this panel today, we will end up answering all the questions you guys have. So again, thank you for coming to our Life After Riordan webinar. We're super excited to have you all here so you can hear from our amazing Riordan alumni. And so to start off, just to go over our agenda really quick, we're just going to talk a little bit about RPAA. For those of you who actually aren't familiar, may have heard about this from other means. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the different panelists we have, as well as myself. And then we're going to open it up to we're going to go ahead and go through the whole process of asking the panelists more about, the thought process for their grad school programs, and then we'll open it up to Q&A for all the different questions that you guys are sending. So remember, go ahead and put them in the Q&A chat while this presentation is going on if you haven't already. So just a really quick overview on RPAA. We started in about 2000, and our focus really about trying to provide graduates an extension of the professional education and leadership development you really get through all the different assets of the written programs. And we really are all about honoring the written legacy. And we want to support all our different members in different ways we can, either be it educational, professional, charitable, all with the goal of obviously making a very positive impact on the community. That's why we're doing different events and things like this. So to start us off, I'm going to talk to you about the panel that we have today, as well as myself. So my name is Johnson Lightfoote. I am the Director of Program Affairs right now for the Riordan Fellows, on the Riordan Programs on the board. And I was a Riordan Fellow class of 17. And actually, I'm just going to adjust this sharing really quick. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and introduce the different members of our panelists one at a time. So first off, Toyin, if you could sign in and tell us a little bit about yourself, your educational background, where you're working, things like that.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. My name is Toyin Ogunleye. I am a class of 17 MBA Riordan Fellows alum. I went to UCLA for my undergrad, and I currently work at my alma mater as an event manager for our fundraising department, actually, external affairs. I'm also involved in the RPAA board as co-president this year. I've been involved with RPAA since graduating from the Fellows program in 2017. So this is obviously something that's near and dear to my heart. So happy to be joining you all today.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Toyin. Leyandra, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
There we go. It's always a Zoom issue, but hello, everyone. My name is Leyandra Pagan. I'm Riordan class of 16, and I was also fortunate enough to be a peer coach for the class of 17 and 18. Currently, I'm a master's student at Northwestern University. I'm studying adult learning science and organizational change, which is a mouthful, but I just like to say that I'm in the organizational development and human capital industry. Prior to that, I worked in finance, ranging from investment banking to corporate finance, but really found that I was always involved in some type of human capital initiative and felt that that was the career I wanted to pursue, which is why I'm at my program, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little later. And prior to that, and for undergrad, I went to the University of Miami, and I studied international studies and minored in business administration, and I look forward to sharing my journey in hopes that it will help some of you.
Perfect, thank you. And Jasmine, certainly last but not least.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Jasmine. I actually was in the same Riordan MBA Fellows cohort as Leyandra, class of 2016. And I currently work as a strategy consultant at EY Parthenon in Los Angeles. And a year ago, I graduated from the Yale School of Management with my MBA. The background on my Zoom is actually Evans Hall, which is where we had all of our classes. And prior to getting my MBA at Yale, I worked in education for 5 years, absolutely loved it, and then got my undergrad in business from USC. But no hate for UCLA. I have a lot of love for Riordan as well, but I'm a Trojan at heart. Really nice to be here today.
Perfect, perfect. And thank you guys all for being here as well. And so, before we get into the grad school questions, I really think there's actually a way more important question we all want to know. With us being at home all the time, unfortunately, fortunately, depending, one of the things that's going on now is you could catch up on a bunch of different shows. So, Toyin, we have to start with you. What is your favorite show you're binging right now, and why? Like, that's the question everyone here really wants to know.
Dead to Me season 2 and Insecure. But I'm not really binging it. I'm just following Insecure right now. Season 4 is out, but Dead to Me season 2. So good.
Nice, nice. Very good choice. Leyandra, what about you?
So I, not really binging either, because the show comes out every week, but Little Fires Everywhere in Love. I read the book a few months ago, and it's been adapted now on Hulu. If you haven't watched it, definitely watch it. 8 episodes. And now you guys can binge because they're all out, but that's how I've been keeping up, satisfying my time during this crazy time.
Nice. And Jasmine, I have my theories, but I'm curious. I want to hear what you're watching.
Oh, actually, this week I just started watching McMillions, which is a 5-part documentary on, for those of you who aren't familiar, there were these people who basically, I'm trying to think of how to best describe it. So the Monopoly game that McDonald's used to have, they figured out how to game it, and basically stole millions from that game before. I'm sure for those of us who went to McDonald's when we were kids, we remember that.
Oh yeah, I actually watched that show. It's a very interesting concept and everything around it. That one whole family rigged everything. Really good choices. So now, guys, we can just leave the panel. I'm just kidding. But one of the things we definitely want to ask you guys is, we're all different parts of the Riordan programs here. We all, found Riordan in different ways. And actually, Jasmine, we'll have you start us off with this. Could you tell us kind of about how you first heard about the Riordan programs? Like, what was your experience like, and what were some of the things that stood out while you were going through the whole program?
Yeah, so I actually heard about the Riordan MBA Fellows program, funnily enough, from a different Riordan program that I was a part of. I did the Riordan Volunteer Leadership Development Program, which prepares young professionals to serve on nonprofit boards, and it's completely separate from the Riordan programs at UCLA. But Mayor Riordan, as we all know, was such a great supporter of so many different initiatives tied to education and strengthening the public sector. But long story short, I did that program, met someone in it who was also a Riordan MBA Fellow, and I had mentioned to him, like, I was sort of thinking about pursuing business school in the future, and he was like, oh, you should definitely try, applying to the Riordan MBA Fellows program. So I did, and obviously it was, a really incredible experience. I think, the folks on this call, and I think are really a testament to what I think is one of the biggest takeaways from the Riordan program, which is having a really amazing network of young professionals and getting to connect with them. And they're all really driven and all thinking about pursuing graduate school and or accelerating their careers in some way, shape, or form. So I really think it was being locked into that community, getting to learn about how people were thinking about navigating that next step in their career, that was the biggest takeaway for me.
Nice. Good to hear about that. You also had a really positive experience. And I would be curious to hear your thoughts on this, Leyandra, since we have history with Riordan programs as well, actually.
Yeah, I heard about the Riordan program through a coworker who knew a board member at the program, and I had been speaking about wanting to go to business school or just wanting to go to grad school in general, and they told me about the program, and I was so grateful that happened, and I'm so glad I applied. One of the best, Jasmine hit on it, one of the best things about the program is just the people that you're surrounded with. The Riordan Fellows in my class, and even the classes after that I was fortunate enough to peer coach with, have been some of my closest friends. I've been to their weddings, just other things, always stay connected. And then 2 major parts of the program really stand out to me. I keep mentioning it, right? The peer coaching thing it's just really a great place for you to learn about yourself along with your professional goals and really tie those together. And you don't really often get that time to think about what it is that you want to do on a personal level and how to translate that to professional goals. I'm very sad to hear that's no longer a part of the Riordan program. So I will say another major part that I love was the Saturday Business Institute, the fundraising and the mentoring and just the service we were able to do, throughout the program and give back while we were being poured into ourselves. So huge Riordan. I always say Riordan fam forever.
Yes, that's very, very true. And Toyin, would you like to finish us off? Tell us you're very involved from Riordan as well, if I know correctly. So.
Absolutely. I actually heard about the Riordan MBA Fellows program through one of my best friends who did the Fellows program and then was involved in SBA afterwards. And I actually got my bachelor's degree in physiology, so complete career change, and so wanted to, be able to learn more about, you know, business school and what that entails and kind of career switching. And so got involved that way. And similar to what Leyandra said, actually, Leyandra was our peer coach facilitator. So Team No Limits. And Johnson was in my peer coaching group as well. So it's all family here. But, you know, I really just enjoyed my time in the fellows program. You just meet so many people who are pretty like-minded in that they're interested in pursuing either grad school or just furthering their careers, or just, you know, setting goals and getting them. You know, we have entrepreneurs and all kinds of different people from different backgrounds, and it's just a great way to not only meet people professionally, but, you know, just friends. You know, we do Zoom happy hours, we wish each other happy birthday, we celebrate when people have babies. And as I've been involved in RPAA, Riordan Programs has just been the gift that keeps giving, because I mean, I get to meet people from the different classes through RPAA as well that I may not have been able to interact with in my program. And so it's just really nice to meet people like Jasmine, see you again, Leyandra, and so many others that I've come across through that common connection of the Riordan programs.
Nice. I think that's a good point. You actually mentioned there, Toyin, and you too, Leyandra, Jasmine, that we're all kind of, even though we're all from different years, we all kind of feel like a family, and this network really brings everybody together to learn, grow, and experience different things that are out there. You know, and one of the things that we're here to actually talk about is the different options and things that are out there. So as the fellows program goes, usually one of the reasons you kind of sign up for the program could be, does an MBA or some type of graduate school make sense for you? And obviously all three of you have very different backgrounds and very different decisions on this whole approach. And so, you know, starting off with you actually, Leyandra, I'd love to hear, you know, you actually did a very different route for Riordan. Usually it's very MBA focused, but you chose a different master's. I'd love to know like why you went that route, what was your thought process behind it, and if maybe you use some personal professional networks around that. I'd love to hear why you decided to go with your specific type of graduate study.
Sure, I'd be happy to share that. And I actually, as Johnson knows, I was very gung-ho about getting my MBA at one point and did a lot of research. I did MLT. Some of you don't know, that's Management Leaders for Tomorrow. It's a great professional network to be a part of, and they can help you apply to business school. Definitely recommend it. Riordan's a great way. You know, first step, if you're on this webinar, is a great first step. But for me personally, I was doing a lot of research on the MBA programs and felt that I was trying to make it fit for what I wanted to do instead of it having it come more naturally. I don't know if that makes sense, but organizational development is a really growing field. It's not a big focus in MBA programs, and some MBA programs are growing in that regard, but it's not 100% focused on that. And so and also my background, I have a quant background. I worked in finance for so many years, and I felt that my first year of business school would be repeating a lot of the things I felt confident in. And so that, along with the fact Riordan and MLT and these other programs really force you to think about what it is that you want to do. And I had to really sit down and think, you know, grad school is a very big investment of time and resources. Is this really what I want to do, or is there another route? And so I spoke to a lot of my friends, some other Riordan alumni, just as many people as I could. I even, you know, cold emailed, LinkedIn, just anybody I could talk to. You know, I was also torn between different types of careers. Just any questions you have, just don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask them, hey, I'm interested in organizational development. Can you talk to me a little bit of what a day in the life of your job is like? What did you do? Or I'm interested in marketing, or whatever it is. So that was really what it was for me. I did a lot of research. I visited different programs, you know, compared and contrasted between my program and the MBA program, and felt that for what I wanted to achieve, switching from finance to org development, I would be better set up for success if I just dove into a master's that focused on just organizational development. But that, you know, is just my story. So it really takes taking time to figure out where you are now, where you want to be, and what's the best step to get you there in the middle. So hopefully that's helpful.
Hey, so Leander, thank you. That was actually the first time I've heard that story as well. So I thank you for sharing that with us and everybody here. Toyin, I could see you were nodding a little bit here. Like the other panelists, you actually decided you're going to go a different route other than, you know, the graduate school approach. And I'd love to hear your thought process on that as well. And, you know, it looks like you were echoing some of the thoughts, at least, you know, via head nods that Leandra was saying there. So I'd love to hear.
Yeah, very similar to Leyandra. It's very easy to kind of get caught up in the, you know, everyone's looking to an MBA and everyone wants to focus on an MBA, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But, you know, I had to really be introspective and say, okay, does that make sense for me? And it's a really big investment, you know, and kind of figuring out, okay, what do I want to do? What am I really interested in? And is the MBA the best, you know, choice for that? And I think it's still an ongoing process. Like, I haven't necessarily completely ruled out grad school or an MBA program, but still like the process of discovering what makes sense for you. And definitely didn't, I mean, like I mentioned before, I have a physiology degree. I was pre-med. I'm definitely not trying to jump into another degree that wouldn't serve me in my career goals. Not that an MBA wouldn't necessarily, but you know, over time, and when you take that introspective look and when you really sit down and look at what do you want, you know, your career to look like, what's important to you in your career. And for me, like, nonprofit is really important to me, and, you know, giving back in education is really important to me. So I had to take a look at that and say, okay, does this make sense for what I want to do? Right now, not so much, and that's okay. And if it does later on, then that's great, but at least I'm stepping into that informed and with an action plan that would make it way more successful than kind of just jumping into something that I'm not really ready for. So that's kind of like the process. Very similar to Leyandra, like asking people about their different, you know, their different careers and how they got involved in that and what that looks like, and figuring out what that looks like and how that looks like in comparison to what I want for my career. So yeah, that's basically my spiel on how I came to that decision, at least for the time being.
Awesome. Thank you, Toyin. So Jasmine, you actually, for the Riordan MBA Fellows, you went to quite the program. You know, my dad went to Harvard and he has thoughts about Yale, but overall, I've heard nothing but good things. But in all seriousness, you know, you went through the Riordan Fellows, you know, we'd love to hear about your process that made you decide an MBA did actually make sense for you, and it was something you wanted to pursue.
Yeah, totally. So I think, you know, the thread I'll pick up from Toyin and Leyandra is that this is like an extremely individual decision, and took a lot of internal reflection that I actually was able to spend a lot of time doing through the Riordan MBA Fellows program, in small group discussion, through, you know, all of the exercises we had to go through. But I think what initially spurred it for me or put the MBA on my radar is I started looking up job descriptions for like my dream jobs. So like I wanted to be a COO, and still do, like a COO or chief of staff of a really large nonprofit, or getting to run like an education nonprofit. And I found that a lot of those really interesting roles, they were looking for people with an MBA or an advanced degree. And I think in the nonprofit sector especially, they really do see the value of cross-sector or inter-sector experience. And I felt that I'd become really, really good in my last job, but in a super niche area. And I really wanted to broaden my capabilities and kind of have a more landscape view of how strong organizations perform and grow, and better carry out their missions, whether for profit or nonprofit. And so naturally that made me look at MBAs, but particularly like honing in on MBA programs that had this cross-sector focus. And it's pretty funny. I actually Googled like top MBA nonprofit programs, and then like Yale just popped up. So they have a really good search algorithm, but they truly are and I'm not biased at all, but they're the top program for a nonprofit business school. And so that sort of is what started the whole path for me in applying to business school. And And there are a lot of really incredible programs in addition to SOM that I considered and applied to and was looking at. And almost any MBA program, I think, nowadays to stay relevant needs to have a very strong social impact center or focus, because I think many of us, and I'm sure many people on this call, like really care about how do you use principles of business to affect positive change in your communities. That's like the Riordan mission, right? And so that's essentially like what led me to get my MBA at SOM.
Awesome. Well, thank you. 3 different persons, but all like very introspective. It seems like you guys all went through the process. Were assessing, a very individual decision, like, is it right for you? So thank you for sharing that. Real quick, as a quick reminder, make sure you guys are putting some questions in the Q&A chat, because you'll, have those questions asked to our panelists pretty soon, actually. But another question I'd be curious to ask, this is more for you, Leyandra and Jasmine, since you guys did do the graduate school route. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the different activities, clubs or classes you were involved in, and how are you kind of using those different activities to kind of leverage your next steps for, I guess in your case, Leyandra, post your graduate program, and Jasmine, what did you use during your time at Yale to help you in your current position? And we'll start with you, actually.
Sure, didn't expect to be put right back on the spot. So at Yale, I feel like I was involved in sort of 3 major buckets of things, and I think this is how a lot of people in grad school view it. One bucket is your like career focused clubs. So that for me was like the consulting club, or Net Impact, which is a umbrella organization for all things social impact, but also had like job related career focused resources for people pursuing nonprofit careers. The second bucket is like social activities. So obviously getting to know people, having fun around shared interests. So I was involved in things like the Arts and Culture Club, like going to plays in the New Haven area at Yale, et cetera. And then the third bucket is sort of maybe what I call like the volunteering bucket. So things that filled my cup in the sense of I really value mentorship. So those were roles like I was admissions interviewer, and I was a career advisor for first-year students when I was a second year. So helping students 1 year after me prepare for the really intense consulting recruiting process. So I was involved in a range of clubs across all 3 of those things, and I think it was really fulfilling for me because they each served a different purpose. So I got to meet friends through the social-oriented clubs with shared interests, got to pursue things that were a bit self-serving, but that's the whole purpose of going to grad school in terms of learning more about consulting, different career paths, and then the last one being the giving back, which was so important for me, and I think was really meaningful because grad school is also very stressful and you're super busy. And in doing activities where I was helping others, that really helped to remind me why I was doing all of this, because it did get very intense at times. And so I'm sure Leyandra can probably relate, or for anyone who's been through an intensive, school process.
I can definitely relate and just jump in on that. That was one, when people ask me, what did you wish you knew before going to grad school, is that it's not undergrad, and it's very different, and it's very intense, but it's all worth it, especially if you really enjoy what you're studying. But to Jasmine's point, it's important to find things that help you fill your cup or give you a break from that. So for my program's a lot smaller. So we have about 140 students at one time. And so we don't have clubs per se. We have more of like initiatives, if you will. We do have a social club where you can plan events. We have social chairs and things like that. You take part in that, of course. And we're, 45 minutes away from Chicago. So that's also been really fun. But then there are more mentorship initiatives where current students sign up to mentor new students, which is what I'm currently doing. And I also had a student buddy, we call them, and I also had a coach as well throughout the program, separate from like a career coach or anything like that. And then, we didn't have too many academic initiatives, but definitely if there's resources or if you need help, or just, reaching out to your classmates and having that community. You're surrounded by so many people who are on the same bucket. That's one of the best things about grad school is that sense of community, and your peers who are hopefully, range from different careers and backgrounds that you can learn from. And another aspect was just being involved in all the career program that my program offers. that was one of the biggest things for me, and I should have mentioned this earlier, is really do your research on what career opportunities your program can offer you, and if that's really what you want. Look at job descriptions like Jasmine mentioned, see if it aligns with the degree that you have, and then does that school have relationships with companies that you're interested? What kind of internship opportunities do they have? Request that data if it's not available, because that's really where the ROI comes for your degree. So anyway, I went on a tangent there, but being involved in the career initiatives and just taking part of that really takes up a big chunk of time, but it's giving back. It's also for your own benefit. I help plan some events in that regard. And then I also work in the office part-time. And there was a way for me to financially also fund the program. Was I got a part-time opportunity in the program office. So I help with marketing, I help with other things. So really it depends on you how much you want to get involved in and what your capacity and your load is, but take advantage of whatever you can while you're in school, and look into what schools offer to see if those are the things you want to be able to do when you go there.
Awesome, awesome. Leyandra, Jasmine, thank you for telling us about your experience so far in grad school. Toyin, I know you hit a little bit at this in the beginning, but obviously you chose a different route without the grad school thing, but you're super involved with RPAA. It seems like it's pretty important to you. Could you kind of tell us about maybe how it helped build out your leadership or skill profiles and how you've grown maybe in a way other than the grad school path?
Oh, definitely. I initially got involved through DMAC, which is our Diversity MBA Admissions Conference, as Director of Programming, because it aligned exactly with what I already did in my career, event management. But, you know, through that, you know, I've also been able to really push myself as far as stepping outside of my comfort zone. And I really appreciate that RPAA has allowed that opportunity. If anyone knows me, I am very much like, prefer to be behind the scenes, hate public speaking. And, you know, it's really pushed me outside of my comfort zone to develop those skills, you know, those networking skills, people skills, leadership skills, especially this year as co-director with Angela, if you're back there, big props. And kind of just allowed me to, you know, get skills in ways that I might not be able to access through my career, where I'm at currently. Along with, you know, like Jasmine and Leyandra rightly said, filling your cup. You know, it's opportunity for me to give back to something I'm really passionate about, something I really enjoyed and had an amazing experience in. And I want that experience to continue outside of just being in the program for everyone. And so for me, it was a number of those things, just being able to give back, being able to keep in touch with my friends and help them and really, you know, grow in other areas that I couldn't in my career, and just allow me to gain more experience. Because, you know, let's say I do apply for an MBA program, it's going to be super useful to have that leadership experience, you know, and while you're, you know, still making that decision, I really implore people to look at other opportunities that can still grow you. Not necessarily just, if you're not sure, that's okay. But still look for things to improve and to grow yourself while you're in that process, I think. And that's what RPAA has been for me, is that opportunity to improve and grow on other areas that might not have been able to, or might not have done if I just decided not to apply and continued on with my career.
Nice. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. That was actually very, very great to see, like, how RPA has kind of given you a different network and a different approach to things. And then Jasmine, Leyandra, hearing about your stuff has been great. So we're probably going to open up to Q&A pretty soon, everybody. Just want a final reminder to put in your questions and everything in there. But one thing I would be very curious to guys to talk a little bit about are maybe the process. You guys kind of hinted at this a little bit. And I think, you know, in my own career, I've noticed this has been a difficult thing for me personally. All have our different challenges and things we need to face when we're going through our career. I'm wondering, like, how do you guys go about selecting different mentors who maybe could give you guys advice that for things you might be lacking, feedback you may need? Because I know for myself, trying to go through the whole route, having someone to talk to would be, at a senior level, would be definitely helpful. Leyandra, you want to start us off with this one?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think it's important to have mentors in different arenas as well, right? So I can think of some of my mentors have been previous bosses, Riordan Fellows from my class or classes even after mine. Other aspects, maybe even speaking events I've gone to, and you go up to the panelists after and you really build a connection and stay in contact, right? So you just have to kind of get out there if you can. And I know there are some introverts out there too. I'm an extrovert, so it comes a little bit more naturally to me, but I also understand that it's not, it can be scary to just go and talk to people and say, hey, would you be my mentor? But I think if you just naturally build relationships, it's really quality over quantity too, right? You don't necessarily need to have so many. It could be one or two. But for me, like I said, I've just tapped into whether it's professional, whether it's a leadership program like Riordan or MLT or other aspects, and just being really vulnerable and asking for help in the things that I need help with, and being willing to take their feedback and criticism, constructive criticism, and apply that to what I want to do. So yeah, I think just try and get out there as much as you can. And if you're looking to find a mentor in a specific industry, that's okay too. Or, you can also tailor your needs or search for specific skills or industries.
Perfect. Thanks, Jasmine. What about you? What has your path been for looking for a
Yeah,
mentor?
I think something that immediately popped into my head is I found that my best quote unquote mentors are the ones that weren't formally designated that role. Like I think I've been a part of like a fair number of like formal pairing programs through like whether it's at work or not at work, but the absolute best relationships have been ones that have formed more organically. And kind of to what Leyandra was saying earlier, it's like you have a natural connection that just springs about naturally because someone shows an interest in you, they see your potential, or someone you really admire. And like there's nothing more flattering to someone being on both ends, like where you tell someone like, hey, I really love how you do XYZ, or I really want to learn more about how you got into this position. And so similarly, I have found my best mentors was like my direct supervisor before, and she was a huge advocate for me in the MBA application process. But then also like peer mentors are so massive. I think in just the last 3 to 5 years, I've realized how valuable our peers can be, and people who are maybe within, one step of your role or even a lateral role somewhere else at an organization you really admire. So I would say like really being proactive about reaching out to those people who just really excite you because they inspire you or naturally. I've found some of like the best long-term quote unquote mentorship relationships have come out of those.
I wanted to just quickly add to really tap into your undergrad network as well. That's like an instant connection. It's an instant conversation starter. And then you can also attend any professional network events for the industry you're trying to get into. I would show up to organizational development events before I was even in school and just try and talk to people and build that network. And then lastly, for the introverts out there, whoever's struggling, talk to other people for advice on how to make that pitch and how to like make that connection. Or I've even Googled templates online, how do you cold email someone and things like that. So there's like a natural aspect, but it also takes some practice. So don't be afraid to use those resources if you need to.
Cool, thank you. And Toyin, what about you?
I think Leyandra and Jasmine kind of hit the nail on the head as far as, organic relationships tend to be like the most, not meaningful, but have been the most impactful, I would say. For me, it's just like those relationships, former like supervisors and things like that, where, we just naturally vibe, for lack of a better word. And like they both said, that horizontal mentorship. I think a lot of times you really think a lot about someone who's above you or ahead of you in your career, but really looking around at the people next to you, your friends, your peers from whatever programs you're in, have a wealth of information and different backgrounds to offer and advice to offer so much. I've learned so much from casual conversations with my friends, both like friends outside of Riordan and, within the Riordan programs and, alumni. And I think it's really important to consider all your resources when you're looking at a mentor, because at the end of the day, it's really about exchange of information and advice, and that can come from anybody. So definitely look back, look up, look around, and look, behind you for the people that come after you too, because a lot of us, for instance, are learning a lot of Zoom techniques and stuff from people who are years younger than us. So that's to say that you can learn from anyone around you, and I think that for me has been really helpful, just making sure I take stock of all the information, all of the resources around me.
Wow, that was great hearing. Well, all of that was amazing advice. I hope everybody's up there taking notes and everything. But yeah, so we got a couple questions here in the Q&A chat. We're going to open it up to questions. So I think the best thing will work is whoever wants to start first can totally chime in. Just put your hand up so that other people will see you on the gallery mode beforehand. But actually, there was one question that I thought kind of would be very interesting to start us off. So, Jasmine, for this part of this question is directed to you, but I kind of want to like expand it a bit because this is a technique I think everybody in life kind of needs. One of the participants asked, how did you find time to prioritize all the different things during your time at grad school? Could you go over kind of some of the process for that? And Leyandra, you're doing it now, so obviously you could go through your prioritization. Toyin, you have to run RPAA, so you could talk about some of that prioritization process as well. But yeah.
Oh, that's just such a tough question, because I think for all of us who are high achievers and want to do the best, you want to do everything and you want to do it all well. And you'd be surprised how much people struggled with this. Many of my classmates, myself included. Something that was really cool, like a conceptual exercise that we did in I want to say the first month in business school, is we were given like a stack of marbles with like a finite number of marbles in there, obviously. And then you had 3 buckets, and the 3 buckets were recruiting, academics, and social. And then you had to allocate your rocks or marbles to those 3 buckets. And then you quickly realize like you can't put a high number of marbles in each one. And so I think knowing that you had to prioritize between major buckets, and that every single individual in our program their distribution is gonna look very different. And I think that's the key thing that's very hard, is because you'll look around you and you're like, oh my gosh, those people are spending so much time prepping for interviews, but like, I feel like I need to do my classwork. And then those people over there are like, have coffee chats, like up the wazoo every day. And you feel like pulled in all these directions. So for me, like, I think it was very, very important each week to really think about, of the like 50 things on my calendar this week, which are like the most important. And in the fall, for me, it was really, I was like, okay, I've come to business school to intentionally pivot and look at consulting as like one career option. And that meant like I had to give X hours a week to like career prep and networking. And that took precedent over some social events that I didn't go to. It meant I got pretty meh grades in the fall. But at the end of the day, I came out with what was most important to me, which was making that career transition, even if I didn't have a perfect transcript or didn't go to every single social event. And I was okay with that. I think like making those sacrifices and knowing what's important can help you to feel a little less stressed with all of the things you have going on.
Definitely can echo that. Angela and I, my co-president, we joke that sometimes we feel like we're running a startup. And I can definitely feel a little like overwhelming, as far as like you want to be involved and you want to be supportive in everything, but you realize that it's not possible. One of the biggest things I've learned is, one, communicating that to your team and trusting them to be able to handle it, and communicating what you're expecting from them has been super key. And I learned to have to say no to a lot of things. Like Jasmine said, there were other things that people were like, hey, could you help with this? And are you able to do that? And I'm like, it's not for lack of love or desire, but I want to help you. But I know that if I help you, I would be able to give it my best, my all. and being able to communicate that. And for the most part, they all understand that, because I don't think anybody else would want, you know, you to have ask anything either. So really being able to learn what's a priority, and, you know, and being able to stick to that. I know definitely there were some times where I'm like, I don't think I've had a weekend free in the past 2 months, because I've been doing either work stuff or RPAA stuff or other stuff. But and so there are going to be times where you're kind of burnt out. But at the end of the day, you really got to take stock of your capabilities and really look in, and, you know, body is willing, but there's only so much you can do. And yeah, being able to allocate those resources. I'm an event planner, and so lists are like my favorite thing in the world. And every week I would go and pull my planner, it's in the other room, but every week I literally have to write out all the events and all of the meetings and all of my tasks and organize them out, just so I can keep track of anything and see what plot holes I may have. It sounds really basic, it sounds really elementary, but it helps me so much, because if I'm starting to see, oh, down the line I have a lot of this stuff coming up, I'm able to manage those expectations and tell folks, well, maybe I won't overcommit in this area because I know I have all these things coming up. So really just taking an inventory of kind of what's going around, and ask for help. Really just ask for help. I think that's the hardest thing to do sometimes, type A's, and you want to control everything and you want to be involved in everything, but really ask for help, ask for advice, ask for help. I think that there's nothing wrong with that, and you learn so much more from it.
All right, cool. So you have that was great. I appreciate you guys telling about your prioritization process. So Leyandra, actually, this question I have for you. One of the questions in the chat was someone was curious more about the different career paths people could have in getting a master's in org change. Could you speak to just maybe a few positions or how that positions work in that space?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm also happy to follow up with anyone after if they want to have, you know, more in-depth conversation about what that means. But organizational change just really helps improve the company's performance. And that could be through change, you know, it could be an acquisition, it could be through a new initiative that's going on at the company, new leadership. And you're driving the change through empowering and managing people and the systems that involve people, which is usually the entire business. So our program likes to say, you know, we focus more on the people aspect of a business and then how the branches go out from there. And so the careers really vary depending on what you're most interested in. And so we call it the human capital tenet, but I always say, you know, on the left side, there's dealing with individual people, and on the right side, there's dealing with enterprise, the entire business. So you could do something like learning and development, which is focused on just training and coaching in either individual people or teams on how to learn new things in the workplace, creating curriculum, things like that. Or you could be an organizational designer, which you help restructure in a company's entire org chart, their processes, their systems, things like that. And so we can, I won't go into too much detail for the sake of time, but it can really range depending on where you're most interested and most passionate about. And there are a few things in the middle for sure, but those are just some examples. And there are a lot of different titles too that you can look into, sometimes organizational development. For example, I have an internship over the summer at PwC doing consulting, but it's called People and Organizations Advisory, right? So, and a lot of time we get the question, what's the difference between org change and HR? And I would say that HR is definitely, sometimes we roll up into HR, but a lot of the time HR is focused on the day-to-day processes and checks and balances and compliance of a company, where organizational change, organizational development is much more strategic, much more wide level, and also involves understanding a lot about the psychology and how people learn, things like that. So that's my org change spiel. But like I said, I'm happy. I'm sure we're going to have, we'll give out our contact info. Happy to follow up with anyone else who wants to have a more in-depth chat.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Leyandra. I actually didn't know a lot of that stuff about organizational behavior. And congratulations on the internship. Glad to hear you're doing well with these times we have here. So this is actually a question for maybe both you, Jasmine and Leyandra. There are actually a few questions for this. Do you guys know any strategies or approaches to getting financial aid for graduate programs, since they can be a little bit pricey? Just curious if you guys have any thoughts or any like information on scholarships or paths like that that maybe some of these people who are earlier in the process could comment on.
So I can speak to two. I imagine most folks on this call are familiar with the consortium and or Forte. And they're both like, well, one, I think what's great about both of them is that they give very substantial scholarships. So Forte is typically a 50% tuition scholarship for women. And then the consortium can provide up to a full scholarship if you embody their mission, which is advancing or being committed to advancing diversity and leadership, which is basically anyone who's involved in the Riordan programs. And so those were two that I was, lucky to be a part of. And another, I think there's a lot of school-specific scholarships, and I think what I was surprised about for Yale, and I'm sure applies to other schools too, is many of them are awarded with admission, so you don't have to do like an additional application. However, there are also some scholarships that occur post-admission. So like at Haas, another school I was looking at, which is Berkeley's MBA program, they had a range of like smaller scholarships that you would then apply to after you were admitted, which was kind of funny because I was so tired when I got the applications and then you had to like reapply for more scholarships, but it's money. So of course you could put in that effort. But it is different from undergrad, I think, in the sense that I think I can confidently say there's just fewer overall scholarships. And I don't believe there's federal aid like there is at an undergrad level because graduate programs just function very differently. But people, please correct me if you've heard differently.
I'll also jump in. One of the best advice I've ever gotten about financial aid for grad school was at an MBA info session, and one of the panelists said, start living like a student now. And I just took that so to heart because I was like 2 years out and I was like, man, I didn't even think about that. Start living like a student 2 years, as much as possible as you can. Start thinking with that mindset now of how you can scale down a few things years leading up to school if possible. So that's one thing. But yes, Jasmine, as Jasmine mentioned, it is a little bit harder to get financial aid for grad school, but it's definitely out there. Like I have there's graduate plus loans, I believe, and other federally backed loans that you could look into, as well as there's websites like Scholly.com and other things where you can write essays for different scholarships depending on your interests. And that takes a little bit more time and effort and work, but definitely an option. And then see if your school offers any programs like mine does where you apply to work in the office and you get a grant towards your tuition, right? And every school varies. But definitely don't be afraid to ask those questions and talk to the financial aid office as well.
I can definitely hop into that point. For instance, when I used to work at the recreation department at UCLA, they had a lot of recreation departments actually have these things called graduate assistantships, where similar to what Leyandra said, you're basically employed either mostly part-time because they understand you're in school, but you're employed and it's paid towards part of your program. So that's another option. I think a lot of people kind of forget that like people need bodies and people need, highly skilled people to work in their offices and to get that experience. And so a lot of times there are some schools that offer those programs. Definitely look into those as well.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for your time. We actually have time for just one more question. So it sounds like, getting a degree, not getting one, it's a very personal, choice, and it's very impactful in somebody's life, depending on what they would do. What would you guys do? One last piece of advice you give to the people who are on the panel as they're thinking about the next steps in their life and doing some soul searching. And you know what? You're going to start us off, Toyin.
I'll give Leyandra and Jasmine some time. Be honest with yourself and don't think that you have to rush anything. I think, in this hustle culture, a lot of us feel like we have to do things at a certain time, within a certain timeline. We're so many years after our fellows program then that we should be applying. And I think we definitely have to, all of us have to take that step back and say it's okay that, you know, I don't have to necessarily follow that game plan. It's almost like when you're young, when you're little, and you're like, well, I want to be married and have kids by 30 and all this other stuff. And you know that life doesn't necessarily work that way. But somehow when we're adults, we have a hard time telling ourselves that or reminding ourselves of that. And it's okay to take the time that you need. And if it's important to you, like, definitely do the research. It's not just going to come to you naturally either. Like, you're going to have to put in work. You're definitely going to have to do the research. You're going to have to do some digging. You're not just going to wake up one day and be like, I think now I'm ready. It's going to take some time to put into all of that, but give yourself the time to do that. You know, you don't have to follow any other timeline. When it's right for you, it's right for you. And I think that's kind of one of the most relieving things in my whole process, is just being okay with when I'm ready. If I'm ready, if I decide that it's for me, whether I'm 50 years old or whatever, pursuing a degree, that's the right time for me, you know? And so I understand, of course, like, everybody has, you know, life plans and goals later on down the line, and school might complicate those things, absolutely. But it's okay to take the time you need to do that, whether you're graduating from college, high school, all of that, you know, at any point in time. Well, I'll say college and looking into grad school. Take the time you need. You don't have to rush into anything. You don't have to. It's not a decision I think that you should rush into either. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I'll add to that as well. I graduated in 2011 from undergrad, and I just started school last year. So I've been out of school for almost 8 years, right? It took me 8 years to figure out what it was I really wanted to do. And that's perfectly okay, right? You'll find when you're in grad school that there will be people who are at different ages, different backgrounds. And that's actually some of the value add of grad school, that you're exposed to that and exposed to different people, and you bring a lot to the table. And also, if it takes you a little longer, I think that sometimes can be a blessing in the sense of, you know, the things you don't want to do, you know, the things that are not really for you, and you have some career experience to take what you're learning in the classroom and apply it to the things you've experienced and the things you want to achieve. So there's definitely pros and cons to each. And as Toyin said, applying to grad school is also not easy. It takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of networking. It takes a lot of preparing and fine tuning. You know, there's exams, GMAT, GRE, different things. So be prepared for that as well, that there's a lot leading up to it that you need to invest in. So take that into account. And then also timing, right? There are different master's degrees look and come in so many different formats. You can do them part-time. You can do an executive MBA down the road if you're not sure. There's just different options for you if you're not 100% sure right now. But just continue to talk to people, go to webinars like this, get exposed, do research on schools, and hopefully you'll figure out when it's the right time and if it's the right time for you for what you want to achieve and what you need to do.
Yeah, I'll be succinct here. I know we're coming short on time and people are probably hungry because it's dinner time. But I think like using this time for really deep internal self-reflection, I think that's ultimately what this whole, it's like a thread that runs through this whole process. Like when you're writing your essays, when you're looking at schools, it all goes back to like, you know, what at your core like makes you really excited and passionate, because that's usually what's driving like our desire to find a different job. Maybe we're feeling unfulfilled in our current role, or there's just something missing that isn't challenging enough, isn't inspiring us enough, isn't pushing us enough. So like thinking about like, hey, from all of those experiences in your past, might have even been in like a prompt from the MBA Fellows, I forget, like what are the ones where you felt like most alive or most challenged, and like seeing the commonalities in those experiences, and you'll probably then identify and be able to extrapolate from that, like, oh, like maybe for Leyandra, like I was always really passionate where I was, helping people achieve their full potential. And so maybe it has to do with people. I'm making this up, but I kind of get the sense from my interactions with her. And so it's like, okay, then how do I fashion a career for myself that allows me to lead people in organizations or things like that. So taking that time for yourself to really reflect, identify those common themes, and trying to enjoy the process as well. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I think that self-reflection and realization of my own, values and what I held dear is what kind of allowed me to push through, the more difficult parts of the application process. Sorry, that wasn't short, but that would be my my concluding thoughts.
Sometimes people got to stay a little bit to get that good wisdom.
And that was so spot on, Jasmine. You just read my whole life.
Yeah, there's all of it, all the pieces. But thank you guys again for participating on the panelists. For everybody who is on the call right now, just so you know, we're actually recording this, so we're going to be putting out the video to this recording, and we'll be sending out the contact info for the panelists so you can follow up and reach out to them and practice some of that cold emailing that Leyandra was talking about earlier before. As soon as my screen share works, we're also going to put up different ways you can get in touch with RPAA as well. Oh, wonderful. Yep, my Zoom's having a little bit of issues. Well, I'll get that up in just a second when my Zoom works, just so you guys can see it. But we just really wanted to say thank you to everybody for, spending some of your time out of your busy Tuesday schedule to see everyone here. So we're going to leave it up on this for just a couple minutes so people can get all the different info for RPAA and follow us on our different social media accounts. So feel free, Twitter, Slack, LinkedIn, all the good stuff. And again, everybody, shout outs to our amazing panelists. Thank you guys so much for your time. And yeah, thank you very much.